Having been a fan since the originals back in 2005 and playing all 6 of the Greek-era God of War games, God of War has continuously focused on expanding the story of Kratos and his relationship with the gods of Olympus. Through this, we see Kratos' evolution as a vengeance-seeking god that is fueled with nothing but hatred. However, nothing stays on top forever. When the franchise slowly started to get stale with the release of God of War Ascension, combined with the backlash from fans, the developers knew that Kratos' story is no longer getting interesting, nor is there anything that needs to be done for the character or story. They knew they had to do something big. Enter God of War 2018. Probably the greatest God of War game of all time. Yes, even including the newest installment, God of War Ragnarok. God of War 2018 managed to completely reinvent Kratos, while keeping everything that we loved about the Greek-era Kratos in the game, and turning him into a much more complex character than the previous ones. Even though they tried to do something similar in God of War Ascension, it simply didn't work, as Greek mythology Kratos was still seen as somewhat of an angry Hulk-like one-dimensional character that lacked any type of serious elements. God of War 2018 humanized him in a way that allowed the players to understand him and sympathize with him, seeing him as more as a man, as a father mourning his dead wife and attempting to raise a child again. This was the perfect start for a new beginning. If you were like me and played all 6 of the Greek-era God of War games, you got a much deeper connection with Kratos as a character, instead of a new player that started with God of War 2018, with the only backstory being a 5-minute recap on YouTube. This changed the emotion and impact of many scenes and the overall story arc of the entire game, such as when he saw Zeus in Helheim, him meeting Athena again, activating Spartan Rage for the first time, and of course, when he was forced to use the Blades of Chaos once again to save his son, after we as the players know the horrific backstory behind these blades. Even though it was a complete new revamp of the entire franchise, the writers didn't stray away from the main focus that all the fans cared about and originally fell in love with, that being Kratos' journey and now his journey with his son. The main focus never changed. It all started with Kratos and his relationship with the gods. Now it's Kratos and his relationship with his son. Fans can easily adapt when you don't change the main focus on the story and characters, like in God of War 2018, because these are the characters we care about. This is the story that we originally fell in love with. Although I have my issues with God of War Ragnarok, which I'll go over in a separate video, the story continues with Kratos and Atreus. However, with Atreus having a more pronounced role than the previous game. I won't lie, there were moments that I felt slightly annoyed with the amount of times we had to play as Atreus, only because I felt like his Asgard arc and Angrboda missions took the focus away from the main story and characters. But as I continued playing, I slowly understood why they did this, especially when we now know Atreus will have his own game in the future. But still, I felt like they could have done a better job at this part of the game, pacing-wise. Nevertheless, the story remained about the 2 characters that were most important to us, and their story revolving around each other. As we progressed throughout the game till the very end, the focus on Kratos and Atreus' relationship was always evolving, until Atreus was now grown up and is ready to go on his own journey exploring the realms. Notice how throughout the whole of the Norse saga, the writers never strayed away from what the fans cared and loved most about the game, the characters and the story. Kratos and Atreus, a father-son relationship, and the journey of a god becoming a father and a boy becoming a man. It was always about them. It was always about the relationship, a journey that had a clear vision from start to finish and felt like one complete story. In The Last of Us Part 1, we witnessed the most beautiful story about love. Love that we didn't think could ever happen. Love that felt inevitable from the very beginning. It felt so natural the way it was being told, with the pacing being beautifully written in a very realistic way that worked extremely well with the great set of characters we were given. The characters were very well fleshed out, highlighting their complexity and their backstories, which made their relationships work in a very natural way, giving the audience the ability to relate and understand their emotions and feelings. This gave Joel and Ellie and their relationship a very life perspective, almost as if they were real. What I love most about The Last of Us is that the story was actually really simple. Joel, a single father that lost his only daughter and person that he truly loved in his life. 20 years later, now a broken man that's still healing. Ellie, a 14-year-old girl that grows up in an apocalypse without a mother or a father. The closest thing to a parent is Marlene, her mom's friend. Joel is simply tasked to bring a random girl that he cares little to nothing about and is treating her as cargo. The end goal? Lots of guns. Where the complexity takes place are with the characters and their relationships. As Joel goes on this journey to deliver this cargo, we see them quite cold towards each other, simply treating this as a job and nothing more. This all changes when we find out that Ellie is actually immune. Tess takes the job much more seriously and ends up getting bitten and is soon forced to sacrifice her life. Tess makes him promise to get her to Tommy's. This changes the tone and relationship between Ellie and Joel, as now we see Ellie care for Tess and feels bad for Joel as she's the reason all of this happened in the first place. Joel, now with a slight resentment towards Ellie for Tess's death and also tasked with taking extra care for Ellie to honor his promise to Tess, continues the journey with Ellie to finish the mission. Throughout their journey, their bond slowly gets stronger as with each task they are faced with more risky and deadly consequences. Joel is eventually forced to rely more on Ellie as they get into more near-death situations, and he begins to trust Ellie more with his life. Depending on each other throughout the journey, they can't help but care more and more about each other, and we soon start to see them become even closer. Things take a bitter turn when Ellie is asked to go with Tommy instead of Joel, and she and Joel have an exchange of words. Ellie brings up Joel's past and opens up that she cares for Joel and doesn't want him to leave her as she'll just feel more scared. Things end badly between them. Joel, now rather angry at Ellie, begins to understand her, and as he calms down, he decides to finish the job and continue the journey together. As the players, we see their relationship slowly start to evolve and become stronger. Joel relies heavily on Ellie later as he gets injured, and Ellie ends up taking care of him. As things progress very badly for them, Joel is eventually tasked to rescue Ellie from a very deadly situation. And we eventually see a beautiful scene where they finally embrace each other as father and daughter. Ellie has finally been able to help Joel move on from his daughter's death after 20 years, and Joel soon starts to open up again for who he really cares about and starts caring for Ellie as if she was his own. Throughout the game, the constant focal point are these two main characters and their bond growing much stronger. My point being, the relationship they develop is what the players notice and care most about the game. These two characters that originally disliked each other, a mission with the simple end goal of getting more guns, has now turned into the most beautiful father-daughter relationship story, and the whole story felt so natural and was so perfectly driven as the writers focused on what the players would end up caring most about the video game, Ellie and Joel and the growth of their relationship. Firstly, I will say that I do agree that Joel's death was necessary to move the story forward. However, not how we got it in the game, and also not how early it happened in the game. I felt that it was a very poor move to kill him off that early in the game, being that we waited 7 years to see Joel and Ellie once again. To kill him off at the start of the game and have flashbacks be the only moments that we get to see them together, it just felt like such a huge waste of time. Like, what's the point? We know he's already dead. Maybe it helped fill in some questions we had about the relationship, but ultimately, it just killed off any excitement and enjoyment we had thinking about how we finally get to see them together again, and to play as them, going on missions together, witnessing their story develop even further. This was a huge mistake in my opinion. Secondly, I had a huge problem with the fact that his death was not realistic at all to the character of Joel. I found it so bizarre how Joel even helped Abby in the first place. Joel would never have put himself or others at risk for random survivors, especially when he knows and sees a huge horde of zombies are literally meters away. Just like in The Last of Us 1, there were so many examples of Joel being an experienced survivor making calculated decisions. He never trusted random survivors as he knew what they are capable of, such as the highway scene, having been on both sides of the ambush. When there was a woman that was being chased by other survivors and Ellie wanted to help, asking Joel, "What do we do now?" Joel simply replied with nothing, and later says that there was nothing we could do. Also, when him, Tommy, and Sarah were escaping the town when the apocalypse first started, Tommy wanted to stop for the hitchhikers, and even knowing that they had a kid, Joel insisted to keep going as he would never risk his or his loved one's safety for others. I just found the whole thing so inauthentic to Joel and Tommy's character. They've been around the apocalypse for so much longer than Abby's group. They know when to take precautions like going to other survivors' hideouts, especially after the events of the first game with the cannibals. Joel and Tommy are so much smarter and wouldn't have even mentioned the name or where they live to random strangers, let alone trust other survivors and willingly go to their hideout where there would be more of them. I almost laughed and said, why'd he do that when Tommy even offered them to come back to the Jackson community, giving them info on exactly where they live, and to even go with them to restock before they head out. These decisions were so poorly written. It feels like they didn't know how to connect the story or to have it make sense at all, and thought, oh, we'll just have Joel and Tommy reveal all of the information and then everything can connect and make sense. In my opinion, it was all reverse plot armor for Joel. Also, not to mention the sheer brutality of his death by the hands of someone that he had just risked his own life to help. It just feels like a spit to the face, showing how little the writers cared for Joel's arc as a character. He deserved a much more honorable death. It felt like his character wasn't as meaningful to the story anymore and was simply used to change the entire story and take it to a whole new direction, completely different from the original idea. Like the writers developed a whole new vision for the franchise and wanted to shift the entire story, using this as an opportunity just so they can have it now be led by two strong female characters, that they have their stories intertwine each other's all because of one man's actions, and they were simply victims of collateral damage.
You don't get to rush this.
Going into the character of Abby, this may be slightly controversial, but I do actually agree with her character, as in the concept of her character and her motivations. Now hear me out. It shouldn't have been something the writers simply created out of nothing just to make a story. What should have happened, in my opinion, was a tie-in to Marlene's death. Picking up where we left off in The Last of Us Part 1, Joel shoots Marlene in the head, claiming that she would just come after them. This left a very shocking reaction with the players, as we know every action has consequences, and we don't really know how we feel about her death, especially from the hands of Joel. Later, we see Joel lie to Ellie about everything after she promised him to swear on the truth. This is where I think they really missed out on a very realistic and natural flow of the story. Perhaps Marlene has a dad and finds out Joel killed his daughter, and he seeks out Joel for revenge with the same concept as Abby's character. This would have made a lot more sense and acceptable by the players. We didn't care about the doctors or security in the Firefly Hospital. They were never crucial characters to the story. From our perspective and Joel's perspective, the Fireflies were bad people. They beat Joel and were ordered to kill him. Also, having the doctors operate on Ellie, sacrificing her life without her even knowing that she'll end up dead. We knew Marlene was a crucial character in all of this. It all started with her from the very beginning. She has a connection with Ellie, a connection with Joel. Also, she's the leader of the Fireflies. Creating a random character out of nowhere to simply fit the story that we're trying to create, it just felt so forced and unnatural to the story. Imagine creating a whole story with its own main characters, and in the next film, have a whole new character that kills the main character and takes the entire spotlight off of them, and have the entire story relate and connect to them somehow. That is not how you continue a story. This isn't how you do justice with the characters that created the entire franchise. That's like doing a Batman film and then all of a sudden have Bane that comes and kills him. And now the entire story centers around Bane that the viewers must now understand and relate to. We didn't come for Bane. This is a Batman film. He should have been the main focal character, and all of these other characters get to be part of his story. The same thing goes for Jerry's character. He was an absolute nobody in the game, a simple NPC that had nothing to do with the story. Then they just decided to make him into an important character and tie him into the plot somehow. None of this worked. I also really disliked how they tried to paint Joel's character as an evil character. Joel was simply a survivor in an apocalypse, doing anything to survive and doing what he thinks is right, as with every other survivor in the Last of Us world. They could have simply used the same plot point of Abby and her dad with any other character that Joel killed. Then we'll just be left feeling sorry for everyone that Joel and Ellie kills and trying to sympathize with them. Like, what about all the other Fireflies and survivors we killed in the first game with Tess? What about all the Seraphites Ellie kills in the second? I'm sure they have a family and backstory too, right? You can't just create something out of nothing, especially when it wasn't even there in the first place, then expect it to work and have the fans accept it. This just comes out as lazy writing and poor storytelling. Throughout the game, we constantly switch from Ellie to Abby. This, I'm sure all Last of Us fans can agree, was extremely annoying. Switching the focus from Ellie to Abby, especially right after she killed one of our beloved characters, was extremely dumb and made me as a player not want to play as Abby. The Last of Us is about the relationship between Ellie and Joel. Creating a whole new character with an extremely unrealistic and almost laughable physique, which, by the way, everyone that's listening, is unattainable naturally for women. Even Abby's body model is based on a roided up CrossFitter, in case you didn't know. Anyway, creating a whole new character who the player must eventually use to beat Ellie to a pulp and also shoot Tommy in the head simply has to be the most dreadful decision the writers could have possibly made. How could they ever think to make a character for the players to use and sympathize with right after she just killed one of our favorite main characters, and now you want us to use her to kill the last main character right after shooting two big characters in the head? The motivation to do so is simply not there. We care about these characters. Why would they think creating two new main characters, Abby and Lev, and fitting them into someone else's story, making them the two new focal characters, would ever work out? The focus should have always stayed with Ellie and Joel, not have another character that the players are forced to sympathize with and feel sorry for when we simply don't. Another thing was how easily Abby was able to switch sides, calling Lev her people now. It was so unrealistic for her to completely abandon the people that she grew up with for a scar that she only just recently met. That may have helped her, but still, for them to become that close so quickly, it felt so unnatural and weird. I mean, doesn't she have any friends or people that she's still close with still living there? Maybe if she was really upset and heartbroken after everything that just happened would have made more sense, but her completely choosing Lev over literally everyone was just weird. I get what they are trying to do, which is to have a mirroring effect of Ellie and Joel, two people that slowly become family due to unforeseen circumstances. But in no way is that remotely the same as Ellie and Joel. Their relationship actually felt real. Abby and Lev's relationship felt like what you can expect when you order Ellie and Joel from Wish.
How much did he tell you?
Not much. I heard some of your people calling him Lily.
Diversity in the game was fine, especially in a post-apocalyptic setting. It makes sense. I had no problem with Jesse or Yara, or any other diverse characters. Ellie being a lesbian was completely fine, as she already was in the previous game, so I don't understand the backlash there. But her and Dina being in a relationship that just took shape so quickly and seriously felt so weird. Just how close they got and how in love they were with such a short amount of time, it simply didn't feel natural at all. I had no problem with Dina, but like I said, the relationship just felt so forced. Like they made her character so close to Ellie and Joel when we were only just introduced to her, as if she was part of the whole story and relationship between Ellie and Joel to begin with. I mean, you only had your first kiss literally yesterday, and now you're at the point in your so-called relationship where you do anything for each other, saying you go, I go, end of story, knowing that you're about to go on a very deadly mission and that you're willing to risk your life and on top of that, your baby's life for? Why? Oh, that's right, she was so incredibly in love with Ellie, and Joel was like a father to her. Anyway, the real problem that I wanted to get into was Lev, the transgender character. Again, when it comes to making video games, especially a AAA video game, the story and characters need to be fully fleshed out, meaning their attributes, their motivations, the backstory, everything. It needs to be realistic. Throwing a transgender character in there as part of the whole story and trying to make it a driving plot point is simply a reckless woke decision. The fact that the writers chose to highlight their woke agendas and use this as a plot point and have the fans to just simply be okay with it has to be the most pathetic decision in all video game history. What purpose does it serve? It does absolutely nothing for the story. Making a transition story as part of the plot point and simply chucking it in there, then calling it storytelling? Like that absolutely has nothing to do with the story. You're just using the Last of Us franchise as a platform to include your woke ideologies. This was stupid. With The Last of Us Part 1, there was only one focus, Joel and Ellie's relationship, and their story. With The Last of Us Part 2, they completely forgot about what made The Last of Us Part 1 so special. A simple story with complex characters. Instead, the writers chose to take the focus away from Ellie and Joel's story and turn it into an Abby and Lev story, along with their woke agendas. Trying to create a whole new set of main characters in the story about Ellie and Joel and simply fitting them in there was the main mistake that ultimately cost them the backlash of the fandom. Not being true to the original vision and not focusing on what matters most to the fans. Not even thinking about what would actually make a great story, rather, what matters most in today's world, according to American politics and Twitter. Other complaints I had about the game are smaller, but still need to be addressed. For example, almost all leaders in the game were all women. Every role with a position of power were all women. This is just another point they're trying to make, which at the end of the day is simply not realistic. Also, all the male characters all ended up dying or got really hurt bad, such as Tommy, Joel, and Jesse. I also thought Isaac's character was kinda cool. I wished he actually kinda survived. Another thing most people aren't talking about are the Seraphites. I really thought they were such a unique addition to the lore of The Last of Us, seeing them as this scary, vicious, cult-like group in Seattle that had a savage way of killing people, until they decided to explore their beliefs through Lev, and have them believing in demons as zombies, and a flamethrower as a dragon's gun. This was just silly to me, as this is a post-apocalyptic world set in the far future. How would they ever know anything about demons and dragons? Also, when Joel tells Ellie the truth about how making a vaccine would have killed her, so he stopped them, then Ellie gets upset at Joel and hates him for it. I always felt like, what is the actual reason that Ellie hates him for? He saved your life. What was Ellie so sad and angry about? Like, what made her initially burst into tears and get furious at Joel? Then at the end of part 2, we see Joel and Ellie talk for a final time, and Ellie mentions that she was supposed to die in that hospital, and in doing so, her life would have mattered. But Joel took that from her. I feel like they could have come up with a better reason that was more clear to the audience's perspective, as I simply didn't see the connection with the whole situation and story. If she had said that she was supposed to die in that hospital, and in doing so, she could have saved so many people's lives, and the reason so many people are dying in the first place is because she's still alive, and a vaccine was never made due to Joel's decision. I feel like that would have made more sense and been better for the story. We even see in the flashback how some survivors got bit, and then Ellie mentions that if only they were immune, they wouldn't have had to kill themselves. I guess this isn't that big of a deal, as Ellie could have meant the same thing, but still, I felt like they could have done a better job in making her thoughts a little more clear, and not just for her to feel purposeless in the world, like her life has no meaning at all because of Joel's decision, and for that to be the whole reason that she hates him and her initial reaction when Joel told her the truth. It's a bit of a grey area, as we were never really given a definitive answer in the first game, whether if she felt no point in surviving anymore and would rather die if it meant she can save everyone else. Also, we as the players could never really know what it's like to be in Ellie's shoes, or what goes on in her head during an apocalypse, while being the cure to the virus. This is also why I thought the connection with Marlene would have worked really well, as this would have been a great reason for Ellie's hatred towards Joel. Regardless that he saved her, she finds out that Joel killed Marlene since her and Ellie are close, and it was also Marlene's decision to take her there in the first place, but Joel interfered with the plan. It would have felt more natural to the story since he killed someone very close to her, along with giving her the burden of many deaths that could have been avoided. The entire situation and collapse of their relationship would have made more sense and been better for the story in my opinion. Do I think that the Last of Us franchise has a chance at a comeback? Yes, I am always hopeful. I do think the third game will be the final one and biggest one. They can definitely fix quite a few things. For example, perhaps the virus that's in Ellie allows her to grow back her fingers. So maybe in the next game she might have her fingers back and be able to play the guitar once again. Tommy might get rehabilitation and be able to walk again. However, he probably won't be able to see out of that one eye again. He will probably work things out with Maria and maybe have a son of his own. Regarding Dina, I honestly hope that she moves on from Ellie, as I thought their relationship just never felt natural and realistic from the very beginning. Like, they had no real chemistry going on, and I would rather Ellie find someone else, honestly. Also, I feel like her character was completely unimportant to the story overall, if I'm being honest. Like, the sole purpose they made her an actual character was for Ellie to simply have a love interest, and that was really it. She felt so meaningless and boring to the story, and as I as a player didn't really care much about Dina's character. Like, her character would not affect the story in any way if she died or lived. Also, I always found it weird how Dina and Jesse had a whole relationship going on, including doing the deed, and in less than a week later after breaking up, she switches to liking girls, then ends up falling madly in love with Ellie. What? I mean, honestly, that's not normal, is it? I guess if she was always a lesbian while being with Jesse and only recently came into terms with it, while developing feelings for Ellie, then I suppose that makes sense. But still, that sudden switch and the pace it developed in was so weird. Anyway, perhaps Ellie works things out with her ex-Cat, who gave her the tattoo, as she was mentioned in the game. Or maybe, Ellie finds someone entirely new that's just like her. Someone that's alone and scared of being alone, and her and Dina just remain friends. As with Abby, honestly, I know they would never go the route of Ellie killing her, as they put too much effort into making her an actual character in part 2, and after all the chances Ellie had to kill her, it would simply be like they wasted the entire time for nothing. Honestly, even though the entire game's story was just one big mess, I would have at least thought it was alright if we finally at the end got to kill Abby and get revenge. It would have felt like there was an actual point in making the game and playing the game, instead of making it to simply kill off a main character and introduce a new main character that kills him, who has now taken his place in the story. Especially when they spent 7 years to make the entire plot of the game based on getting revenge, and to finally at the end have that revenge taken away from us. I mean, seriously, after all of the times that Ellie wanted to kill her, and then when she finally gets the chance to do so, she decides last minute not to, simply because she thought of Joel? That was so stupid. Like, seriously, wouldn't that have made the revenge more satisfying for Ellie and for the players? After everything we've been through and how far we've come, the sole purpose of the game, the very driving point of Ellie's emotions and motivation to find Abby and kill her, to get revenge, they decided last second that she no longer wants to? That part honestly had me done with the game. Like, I questioned what was the whole point of that? Making an entire game just so you can kill off the main character and introduce a new main character, only for everyone to hate, and at the end we don't even get revenge? As I stated before, this just feels like they wanted to shift the entire course of the story in exchange to completely dismiss Joel's arc and story as a character, like it all meant nothing, and for it to no longer be about Joel and Ellie. Completely changing the whole outline of the story so they can now have 2 strong female leads as the new main characters, and for their story to become the future of the franchise. Anyway, if Abby were to actually die, I believe it would come from the hands of Tommy, as he is still seeking revenge for his dead brother. And I think Tommy might end up sacrificing his life for Ellie. Who knows, maybe Lev might be the one to get it done. The thing with Abby is that they try to make her out to be a hero and a good character, as well as a main character at the same time. They wanted us to understand her perspective and relate to her feelings. This was not a good decision. They should have simply made her the new villain. If they had done this, then there would have been no major issues with the story and backlash from the fans. This is either what they're trying to do from the very beginning, like they had it all planned out, sort of an origin story for Abby, who eventually becomes the villain, which I highly doubt, or this is the direction they will end up taking in the 3rd game, as this is the only way I can see them being able to save the franchise and redeem themselves. Abby has to turn into the villain in the next game, or rather, an anti-hero, and Tommy has to finally get revenge for Joel. One thing for sure is, I don't want to see them explore Abby's story anymore, and especially make us play as Abby or Lev in the next game. What I think they're going for is that they'll maybe do something like where Abby and Ellie make peace, but Tommy and Lev are unaware of it, and it sort of spills out between them. This might cause some tension between the two groups, and the same collateral damage will take place. Perhaps someone gets killed by accident in the process of getting Ellie to the right facilities to make the cure, and things will take a turn for the worse. Lastly, with Ellie, I think she ends up surviving, and they manage to make the vaccine while keeping her alive. She'll think back at how Joel saved her, and it all wasn't for nothing, as there was always a way to save humanity with her being alive, and she never had to sacrifice her life. Or maybe Joe's lie actually does come true, that there are dozens out there just like Ellie to make a cure. I think in the next game they should just focus on the remaining few characters we have. If we can simply just play as Ellie and Tommy in the next game, I think that would be the best decision they make. As well as leaving out any woke ideologies they have in mind. If we have to witness any Black Lives Matter movement, 2 in the stunning, 1 in the brave feminism, or pronouns being a thing in the post-apocalyptic world for the next game, well then, The Last of Us 1 will simply be known as The Last of Us to me, as that's the only game that will be canon for me. Just like Star Wars, the sequel trilogy simply doesn't exist for me. They'll never be part of the franchise for me if that's the kind of treatment they're gonna get. If that's what matters most to the writers and developers, and that's all they're focusing on, simply casting aside the story and characters and treating them like it's the second priority instead of what should always come first, then that'll be it for me. The Last of Us will be a standalone video game, and I'll simply have to accept that. In conclusion, the way I see it, God of War succeeded simply because they always kept their eye on what matters most in their story and characters, staying true to their vision, whilst keeping the perspective of the fans in mind. As with The Last of Us, they started to stray away from the original vision, as throughout the construction of the story, the writers mentioned that they made last-minute changes to the story, like making Lev transgender, and his transition story as a plot point, as he originally wasn't. Also making Dina pregnant for the sake of normalizing gay couples, raising kids and starting a family. This showed that they had no clear vision and were simply trying to make everyone happy and included. And in doing so, completely forgot about what mattered most and what their number one priority should always be: a good story with a great set of characters, and most importantly, what the fans would think. Also, I just wanted to say that there were many things that I actually really liked about The Last of Us Part 2, some of them even more than in God of War. I may have highlighted only what I didn't like about the game in this video, but that's just because this video is about how one franchise can succeed and another can fail, simply by making bad and drastic decisions to the story and characters, and forcing in their woke ideologies. As previously mentioned, there were things that I didn't like about God of War Ragnarok 2, but they were so much smaller compared to The Last of Us Part 2 regarding the story and characters, so I'll be making them into separate videos. Be sure to look out for those 2 videos coming in the near future. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, even though I have my very strong opinions in the game regarding the direction of story they decided to take, Ashley Johnson, who plays Ellie, absolutely got robbed for best performance. Like I said before, there were a lot of things that I actually really liked about The Last of Us Part 2, one of them being the performances in the game. Laura Bailey, who played Abby, did a great job, don't get me wrong. But how could they have denied Ashley, who not only played a way more emotionally straining role, but also had to play multiple ages of Ellie, showing how her mannerisms and personality developed along with her voice throughout the 4 years. Ashley, in my opinion, gave one of the most beautiful and realistic performances in all video game history. She played Ellie perfectly, and with respect to Laura Bailey, deserved the award for best performance. Also, not to mention the singing she did for the video game soundtrack. Each and every cover was perfectly executed with such a beautiful voice that truly captured the essence of Ellie and her emotions. Along with Troy Baker, who of course plays Joe, even though he didn't have much of a part to play in this one, which he also did fantastic by the way, he absolutely nailed it with his covers of Future Days and Wayfaring Stranger, along with his excellent guitar playing skills. Also, Naughty Dog, if you're watching this, don't take it too personally. I do truly think you can redeem yourselves and save this franchise. Just don't ruin the next game for us. Keep the fans in mind whilst writing something that's actually for the good of the story, or rather, what's good for Ellie's story now, while paying tribute to Joel's character. Keep out any woke ideas that you have in mind, and you might just pull this off. This video already took me like a month to make, and I don't plan on making a sequel. Thank you guys for watching my video. I'll be making more story and character analysis videos such as this one, highlighting my thoughts on certain franchises. My main focus on this channel will be all about storytelling that's related to my favorite video games and other franchises in movies and TV shows, such as God of War, The Last of Us, Dune, and Avatar. So expect to see lots of what ifs and fanfictions, as well as react and review videos on certain topics of interest, as well as original short stories and voiceover work. If you enjoy my content, like and subscribe. If you agree or disagree, feel free to comment below. I'll be replying to everyone since I only just started making videos for my channel. I'll also be doing plenty of gaming Let's Play series along with my story-based videos. Here's the current lineup of video games that I'll be playing in the near future, so expect lots of AAA story-driven games on this channel. In the meantime, feel free to comment below if you have any suggestions on future videos and Let's Play series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.